Welcome back to my workshop. Now today, for the first time in ages, we're going to do something a bit woodworky. Now I've been rummaging through my scrap wood bin, come up with some bits of wood, and I have a project. And the project involves shoes. Okay, let me explain what I'm going to do. Okay, so what I've got here is a very small pair of ballet shoes and a very small pair of tap dancing shoes. Okay, now these are my nephew's daughter's, so that'd be my great niece. Anyway, my nephew's daughter's first pair of tap shoes and ballet shoes, and what they want is they want them put in a frame, okay, a little display case. So I've got a few bits of materials here. I know how big it's got to be roughly. All I've got to do is come up with a design. So let me show you what bits of material I've got. Okay, so obviously we've got the shoes here, which I've got to put in there. I've also got some of these. Now this is oak, I believe, but they're actually drawers. Okay, so they've got some funny profiles on them. This was obviously where the base of the drawer used to go, and this is where the sliders were. But I've got some material here I can use. So I've got a few of those. I've got a couple of pieces of flooring. Okay, now this is oak veneered flooring, and if we look at it, there's probably about 3 or 4 mil of veneer, and the rest of it is softwood. But I've got 2 bits of that, which I might be able to make the sides out of. And I've got this, which is a quite a dodgy old picture frame. Okay, the frame is actually made of MDF, coated in something. You can see the sort of joinery that's going on here. So this frame's no good, but I can use the bit of glass. Okay, so the idea is to make a display for these shoes and these shoes using that material. I've got a rough idea. Let me draw you a picture. Okay, so my rough idea is going to be determined by the size of the glass. Okay, if I had a bigger piece of glass, I'd make it a different shape, but that's the bit I've got to work with. Now, obviously, the glass is fixed. What I need to do first of all is replicate that frame, but make it in real wood. Okay, so like this. Okay, and then I'm going to use that as the inside of the box. So the actual outside of the box will fit around the edge. Okay, don't know what sort of joinery I'm going to do. Probably a little bit bigger there. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so this will be the sides and the top and the bottom, and it'll be probably about 100 mil deep. Okay, how's that looking? Rubbish? Good, right? Okay, so the inside of the box will be like this. There's lots of lines. And then the shoes will somehow hang in there. Okay, like that. That's the rough idea. Now that's the only plans I've got at the moment, and I'm limited by the wood that I've got. So what I'll do is I'll start cutting some wood, and what we'll do is we'll make it up as we go along. Right, let's get the table saw out. Right, it's actually been so long since I've used my table saw. I think a good idea would be to actually check to make sure the fence is parallel with the blade, and to make sure the blade is vertical, okay, if I want to do 90-degree cuts. Things like it's been so long, I've just gone to use my angle meter here to check the blade, and of course the battery is flat, so I've now got to put a new battery in it. And of course now I've got 2 batteries, and I don't know which one's charged and which one isn't. Right, let me put some batteries in this. Okay, so the first thing I've got to do is use my angle gauge here, zero it on the table. Okay, so we know that it's 0 degrees. Stick on my blade, probably raise the blade a little bit higher actually, so we can get it off of the teeth. Okay, on the flat of the blade. Make sure that's at 90 degrees. Yeah, that's at a stop. Right, so I'm happy that that is now straight, or actually at right angles. Next thing to do now is obviously bring the fence in and make sure that that's level with the blade. Right, so obviously next thing I need to do is make sure that the fence is parallel to the blade. Now obviously with it locked up. Okay, and to me, That looks good. Okay, obviously I can also measure it from one of these runners in the table, okay, and do the usual checking the distance here and checking the distance between here and the fence, okay, but I think I'll be satisfied with that as it is. Okay, the obvious place to start is to cut this flooring, because if you look at it, it's got a tongue and groove on here. Obviously I need to get rid of that to find out how much material I've actually got to play with. The flattest edge I've got is this side, which is on the groove side, so that can go up against the fence, and then what I can do is I can trim off the tongue bit. Right, let me get on with that. Obviously it's been a while since I used the table saw, so I've got to be extra careful now, make sure there's nothing on the table, and I've got dangly bits which I shall tuck away. Last thing I want to do is be dragged into the table saw. Right. No specific measurement at the moment, just doing it by eye to get rid of that tongue. Right, let's go. Right, so I've now got a straight edge on my pieces of wood here. I need the frame to be about 100mm deep, okay, or about 4 inches deep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my blade 4 inches away from the fence. I'm going to cut some strips, so hopefully I'll have enough for the sides and the top and the bottom. Okay, I won't show me cutting that, that's a bit boring. Okay, so I've cut my top and bottom 2 sides. There's obviously a couple of little voids in here, but hopefully the way I design it, I should be able to avoid those. I've had to do them slightly less than 100mm because I didn't allow for the actual groove in the side. It shouldn't matter, they should still be deep enough. Right, what I need to do now is replicate that picture frame using these bits of wood. So my dodgy picture frame here with the MDF frame, I'm going to use this. The concerns I've got is very slightly thinner. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem, but I haven't got much margin of error here. Okay, so I've got to make them exactly the same size because I don't have a lot of free play. Okay, so what I need to do is cut a piece the same size as that, and that out of this material. Okay, but I mustn't forget I've got a big groove on the back, so I can only use this part unless that part's the same size. But that's got a groove on the back. Oh right, okay, just this little bit here then. Right, again I'll run those through the table saw. Okay, so here's our dodgy picture frame. I've cut my 4 pieces here, which are going to be obviously the top and the 2 sides and the bottom. What I've got to do now is obviously cut some mitre corners. Okay, so these are going to be 45 degrees on the corners, but also I've got to do this recess. Okay, it's probably easier to do the recess before I do the mitre corners. Okay, these makes these easier to handle, and obviously less pointy corners. It's surprising, even though these are off of 4 drawers or 4 sides of drawers off of the same desk or bench or whatever the hell it was. There's 4 completely different types of grain pattern here, but they should all be sanded, they should all be okay. It'll make it interesting if nothing else. Okay, so first thing I've got to do is cut this rebate here. Right, because I'm going to do it on the table saw, this here, let's have a quick measure of that. This I think is about 6mm. Okay, now my pieces of wood are 12mm-ish. Okay, so I want to go halfway through there. So if I set the height of my blade here to 6mm, problem is I've just gone to use this, which is my blade height gauge. And again, because I haven't used it for so long, it's got a flat battery, doesn't work. And it's alive. Right, let's measure my blade height. Okay, the process with this is fairly similar. What you do is you basically put this on your flat surface. You push the 0 button, okay, which in this case is this. Okay, once that's at 0, okay, then what I do is I put that on top of my blade on the highest tooth. Okay, and we can see at the moment that's on 7.75 millimeters. So we lower it down. Okay, right, so that's the height of this fixed. So lock that in place. Now, one thing with this, obviously the tooth on the blade here is not flat, it's got an angle. The angle's alternate, but that's not a problem. I'll clean that up afterwards with a small chisel. Right, all I've got to do now is bring my fence in to the right distance, and then you should be able to cut a groove. Going handheld here, a bit of an unconventional way of using this depth gauge here. I need this edge of the blade to be 6 millimeters away from the fence. So what I can actually do is make that straddle the blade, okay, and then just push it in onto one of the teeth. Okay, look at that, spot on. Okay, so yeah, you can use those horizontally as well as vertically. That's good. Okay, so the plan with this is to run these along here, and that should give me a single groove like this, and then I'll move it a little bit closer to the fence and cut this bit out and then clean it out with a chisel. But obviously I've got to be careful here because the throat plate here is rather large. I don't have a zero clearance plate for that. Also, I haven't got a riving knife on here because obviously if I had a riving knife in, I wouldn't be able to do this. So what I'll have to do is minimising the kickback, because obviously I'm not doing a complete through cut. But what I shall have to do is use 2 push sticks, one on here and one on here, okay, and guide it through very slowly and be very careful. Let me get on with that. Right, so I've now cut my 4 little frame pieces here. Now, as I mentioned, I haven't done much woodwork recently. Now, there's things you forget, and there's sequences and processes you forget that could save you a lot of time and a lot of faffing around. Let me quickly explain. I can get over this one, but let me explain. Right, so first off, I've basically replicated this profile here. Okay, that's nice, that's great. I can use these to replace these. But the thing is though, I didn't really need to do that. Now I've done a complete cut out here because obviously before you had the glass in here and you also had this piece of backing material. Okay, now I don't need those, I just need the glass. So what I could have done is just basically cut a single groove, say like this one. Obviously this is thicker, but I could have cut a single groove just for my glass to sit in, because the glass doesn't need to be removed. Okay, that would have been a single cut and it would have been job done. But never mind, you live and learn. Every day's a school day. And also, if I'd done some proper measurements, if you look at the remainder of this offcut here, this profile here is sort of a block and then a little piece, which is exactly what we've made here. Okay, and they just happen to be almost exactly the right size. So what I could have done is, instead of using 4 of these, I could have just used 2. If I'd measured, I could have cut one out and then just sliced along here, and I could have saved myself a lot of messing around. But they're done, they'll be fine. I can actually silicone the glass in. So what will happen is these will sit like this, obviously with mitre corners on, like that, and then the glass can sit in here, and I'll probably just silicone it in. Okay, that's the rough idea. Let's move on to the next bit, which is going to be the mitre corners. Right, to do the mitre corners, I'm going to use this, okay? I'm not normally a fan of these because they've normally got quite a bit of slop in them, okay? And what I need to do is try and cut this sort of mitre corner, okay? But obviously that's got to be accurate, otherwise this and this won't be a 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I roughly set it up, okay, using my big, massive square here. Okay, so as far as I can see, it's going to be approximately right. Okay, let's get it right. Okay, but what I need to do is some test cuts. Now, what I need to do is get some pieces of wood. How about let's use this frame. Oh, look, that's quality. So obviously I need to replicate this kind of angle. So if I do 2 cuts on that and then I can measure it, obviously be careful, this has got bits of metal in it, I don't want to cut those. All I'm going to do is run it through here and then use that to measure. So I don't need it that big. Okay, this is a known good square. Actually, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. I could live with that. Right, well, strike while the iron's hot. Right, so that's now all my mitre corners cut. I've just laid it out and stuck it with a bit of tape for now to make sure that the mitre joints are okay, which they look like they're going to be fine once they're glued. So in theory, this bit of glass should just fit in here, which it does. Okay, so what I've got to do is somehow reinforce those corners and glue them up, etc. But now it's getting late. What's the time? It's about 10 past 10 at night, so it's time to go and have a cup of tea. All right, so what I need to do now is obviously stick this frame together. The problem is, in the workshop at the moment, it's so cold, I don't think the glue is going to go off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it up in here and then move it into the house where it's a little bit warmer. And the way I'm going to do that, obviously I need to keep it flat, so I'm going to use just a piece of board. And I don't want the glue to stick to the board. So all I'm going to do is cover it in paper. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just stick the corners together with wood glue. Problem is it's end grain to end grain. It's not much area, so it's not going to be very strong. But if I glue it, it should be strong enough to hold together. Then I'll find a way of actually securing it a bit more once it's dry. So all I'm going to do, little dab of glue on each corner and hold it together and then put it somewhere warm. Right, so what we need to do now is move on to the frame. Now remember these bits of flooring that I cut, they are going to be the outside of the frame. Obviously not this big because that's a bit too big. Okay, so what we need to do now is profile these so when the frame's dry, it slots into the front of this. Let me show you what I mean up close. Okay, so if you imagine this is obviously going to be one of the sides. Okay, so we've got a veneer here, which is probably, I don't know, about 4mm deep. So what we want to do is we want to remove all of this softwood. Okay, all this stuff in here is quite soft and just leave the veneer on the edge. Okay, and we want to take that down the same thickness as our frame. Okay, imagine this is our frame. Okay, so what we want to do is take that down the same thickness as the frame. So what we'll do is we'll have a bit of a measure up. Okay, we'll end up with a line like this. So I want to remove all of this lot. Okay, so that's the front. On the back, obviously it's just going to have a piece of board, which I will need to remove. So what we do is we'll make a measurement, probably about 6mm along here. And then we can remove that as well. Now we'll do all of that on the table saw, the same method we use with the frame at the front. So I'll set that up and then start doing some cutting and try and get this as accurate as possible. Once we've got those cut out, then we can start cutting that to the right length. Right, so we know our frame is going to be just over 12 mil. Okay, obviously this is the same thickness as the other wood. What we want to do is cut away this slightly over 12 mil because it'll be easier to sand that down than actually sanding the face of the frame. So what we're going to do is going to use our little trick again with our depth gauge. Okay, we'll set the teeth height. Let's come down a little bit more. Okay, we want to set that to probably 13 mil. 12.92, that's about right. Okay, let's go a bit. Now, it should be 12.92. Check. Okay, bang on 13. Okay, so I'm happy. This side of the blade is at 13 millimeters. Okay, so when I run this through, it'll be at 13 millimeters. All I've got to do now is set the depth of this on the blade. Okay, so I've just quickly set up my blade height. I've done a trial cut here, and as you can see, it cuts away all of the softwood. It just leaves me the veneer. I'll try and zoom in a little bit, but if you look there, you can see that it ends up with a little groove. Okay, like a V-shaped groove. That's because of the shape of the teeth on the blade. But hopefully I'll be able to get away with that. So that's the right depth. Let's give that a go. Okay, so we've got our first groove in each of these pieces. What I do now is I move the fence closer to the blade by a couple of millimeters each time, and then I can gradually work away at all of this until I can get it down and remove the remainder with a chisel. Okay, so let's move this in a couple of millimeters. So all I need to do now is remove the remaining bit of this softwood here that just leaves me with the hardwood veneer here. Okay, I'll be able to tell when I've got down to it because I can just see that. And then in theory, when I get our frame, that should sit in here like this. Okay, so from the front it will look like this. So with a bit of care and attention, I should be able to get that looking good. Also on the back here, I've done a small profile in exactly the same method, and that is obviously for the back panel. Okay, right, first thing I've got to do though is sharpen my chisel because this one's a bit blunt. Okay, and I'm going to carry on with that. Again, because it's been so long since I've done any woodwork, I forgot I even had this. This is my edge plane. Now, if you look carefully, now as you can see, the blade goes right the way up to the edge there. Okay, unlike this one, which is my old Stanley 4. Okay, there's a little bit of land either side. What does that mean? Is I can get right up to the edge. So I can do that instead of using a chisel. Right, Let's do that. Right, so I've been using my plane. I forgot how much fun that was. So much so that look at the amount of mess I've made. So I think what I'll do is I'll quickly tidy up here, which you don't have to watch. I'll tidy up before we get on to the next bit. Right, so it's a couple of days later now. This has been drying in the house. It's obviously stuck to the paper, which is better than being stuck to the piece of board, because I could just sand off those little bits of paper. As I say, this is just stuck for now. I will reinforce it later on somehow. Let's have a look, get the corners off. Right, well that's a start. Now what I've got to do is get all the edges sorted out. Let me explain what I'm doing. Okay, so what's going to happen now is these bits of wood here, the bits of flooring, which are the sides, the deeper recess, okay, is where the frame is going to sit. Okay, so obviously it's going to be on the sides and on the top. Okay, but obviously at the moment I've got this sort of corner going on here, which is not very good. So what I have to do is I've got to do a mitre on this piece and this piece. Okay, so every corner I've got to do a mitre. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to again use my table saw, and what I've got here is my table saw sled, or another table saw sled, like this, and I've got my blade set about 45 degrees. So all I've got to do is put my sides on here and run it through the blade. That's simple. What I'll do is I'll do the first corner and then see how it looks. Right, so these are the two mitres I've just done, and what I've got to do is obviously this is going to sit here, this one is going to sit like this, and with a little bit of molly foodling we should be able to get this nice and level. Okay, something like that. I can't even see it from this side. Okay, like that. So all I've got to do is now do that on every single corner. So this corner here now I've got to cut, and that one over there I've got to cut, and then two more over that side. Right, hopefully that's going to be all right. Might work, you never know. Let's give it a go. So what I've got now is my 4 bits. So I've got a long side, short side, long side, short side. They're all profiled. All the mitres are done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick trial dry fit now. I'm going to flip these all over and tape them up, and then see if they actually make a square. Okay, flip, flip, flip. Now give it a tape, just one tape, fine. Okay, same next one. Give it and fold, 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 like this. Okay, let's try the frame. I hope this fits. Oh, oh, look at that. Right. Well, that's a good start. Right, so I think I better glue that while it still fits. Before I actually get the glue out, it's very cold in the workshop at the moment, so it's going to take ages for the glue to go off. But what I've done here is a dry fit. Okay, so that means putting it together without any glue. And I've just figured out which clamps I'm going to use. Okay, so what I've got is 2 long Bessie parallel clamps, okay, for the top, the length. Okay, I leave those approximately adjusted. And then 2 speed clamps, okay, these are Parkside ones for the sides. Okay, I've had to take off the plastic feet because it was about 2mm too short. Okay, again, I'll leave those approximately the right size. So what I've got to do now is open this up again, put some glue on it, put it back together, clamp it up, make sure it's on something it's not going to stick to, and then leave it for probably a couple of days because it's so bloody cold. Right, let's get some glue out. Okay, so it's all glued up now. I've got my clamps here. I added an extra clamp in the middle here because there seemed to be a little teeny tiny gap. So I put an extra clamp there, but it didn't matter. I've got my 2 long Bessie clamps here and 3 squeeze clamps. Hopefully all the corners are nice and secure. Okay, obviously a bit of sanding is going to be needed. I've cleaned up as much of the glue squeeze out as I can in the corners, a little bit there because that'll be a bit difficult. Once it's actually all together and dried, it might be a bit difficult to actually clean it up. So what I'll do now is I'll probably leave this for a couple of days because it is so cold now and damp, so the glue is going to take a lot longer to go off properly. I still might do some reinforcement on the corners. I'll make a judgment once it's actually dry. Okay, but for now, I think that'll be it for tonight. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. And next time you see me, hopefully, this will be dry. Right, so I've taken all the clamps off now. I've checked it to make sure it's quite sturdy, which it is. Now what we need to do is put a back on this thing. Now I need to be able to remove the back, obviously, because I've got to put the shoes on it before I mount it in the frame here. Okay, so all I'm going to do is use a piece of this, which is, I think it's 6mm ply. It's got quite an interesting grain pattern on it. Okay, so I'm going to use this bit. So all I've got to do is cut it so it actually fits in here. That should be simple enough. Right, so that's now the back piece cut to size. It's a little bit twisty because it's ply and it's been outside, but it should be okay. We'll be able to flatten that. Okay, what we need to do now is have a quick look, see what it's going to look like. So I'm going to pop the glass in quickly. Obviously, it's very dirty at the moment. Just pop the glass in, hold it in with a couple of bits of tape. Okay, and then put the back on. Let's go that way. Okay, let's see what it's going to look like. Yeah, it's starting to look all right. Okay, what I need to do now is position my shoes because I want to do some engraving on the back and also on the front here. So let's position the shoes and find out where I'm going to have them. Right, I think I'll have them something like this so we can see that these are actually ballet shoes. And these, to see their tap shoes, I want to have one with the sole facing upwards. Right, so in theory that should look a bit like this. Okay, and what I want to do is have some engraving here to say tap and an engraving here to say ballet. Okay, that sort of idea. But what I've got to do is find out how I can fix these to the back. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to glue them. I want to put them in so they can be removed. I'm thinking maybe a small thread through here, through the back panel. And then on here, I don't really know. I might be able to take these plates off and put some ribbon through it and then feed that through the back. I'll make that up as I go along, I think. But that's a rough idea. So I've got to figure out where I've got to do the engraving before I actually finish this off. I think I've come up with a solution for holding the shoes to the backboard. On the tap shoes, what I've done is I've undone these 3 screws here to release the rear tap. And I've just threaded a piece of black ribbon through. So what I'm going to do is make a couple of little holes in the back panel here. Then these 2 can go through the back panel and be tied off at the back. And the same again on this one. I shall put a bit of ribbon through the back like that. And then again, a couple of little holes. I can put that through and tie it off at the back. So that's the tap shoes. That should be okay. Now, as far as the ballet shoes go, what I've got is I've got a bit of pink ribbon here. What I might do is just quickly put a single stitch or so through the back here and then make some sort of bow with this. And then again, make a small hole and tie it through the back. Okay, so I think that's probably the best solution. And hopefully that'll work. So I've got to figure out where exactly they're going to go and drill some holes. Right, I'm going to go a little bit hands-free for this. What I've done here is I've done a little design. Oh, can't see because of the lights. I've done a little design which I'm now burning onto the back of the cabinet. If you can see here, I've cut out those little bits for the shoes using the laser rather than using anything else. So I'm going to leave that to do its thing now. Hopefully it won't take too long. I think probably about 40 minutes. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn on some extraction, which is my little blower down here. Otherwise I'm going to smoke myself out. Right, let's leave that. So this has just come off the laser now. Obviously we've got the place where the ballet shoes go and the tap shoes go. I've got the holes cut out here for the ribbons to go through. A little bit of music and a ballerina and a tap dancer. But this needs a little bit of a clean up. It's got a little bit dirty here. It's quite a deep engrave. So what I'm going to do is quickly give it a very, very light sanding with this. I've got to be careful because I don't want to go through the veneer. So let me turn this right down and give it a quick go. That's a bit better. So all the engraving's done now on the back panel there. Made a bit of a mistake where I was moving stuff around on the design. Once I fit it in, this ballet here at the back comes a bit too close to the top, which is a bit of a shame because I have got room at the bottom here. But the problem is I haven't really got time to do the rest of it again. I've tried the shoes on it, it fits okay, but I'm going to have to live with that, I think. But the next thing I've got to do is put some screws in the back here because I need this back panel to be removable. So what I'm going to do is flip it over, and then from the inside I'm just going to quickly draw a line around there, and that should give me the area that I can drill into. Let's find my pencil. Okay, I found my pencil. Let's quickly mark this. Obviously I'll end up sanding off this pencil mark because it'll be on the back. Okay, so now I have a pencil mark. If I turn this over, now I know where the edge of the wood is, so I can drill some holes anywhere in this line. It's gone a little bit twisty, but hopefully when I've got some screws in it, it should be okay. I'll probably do a couple on either side, one at the top, one at the bottom. That'll do. Right, let me drill them. So that's the final bit of engraving done. I've got some writing at the bottom there, some at the top. I really don't like this bit. Never mind. Right, so what I've got to do now is everyone's favourite. I've got to take that off and start doing some sanding. Right, we're getting there. There's one thing I do want to do next. I've sanded it, which is it's turned out quite nice. Considering it's just wood, obviously these were the wooden floorboards, and obviously these bits were the drawer frames. But inside, you can see this bit here is still, it's quite, I don't know about cheap, but it's quite a nasty bit of softwood. So what I want to do is I want to line that with something. So I'm going to have to go shopping because I think I would like to make some sort of mirror thing in there. Okay, but I'm going to call it a night for tonight because it's now 10 o'clock at night. And I will come back to that tomorrow after I've been shopping. So when I see you, it'll be 2 seconds, but really it'll be tomorrow. So this next bit may go horribly wrong. Now what I want to do is on the inside here, where this cheap wood is, I want to cover it up. Now I was going to paint it, then I was going to cover it in leather, then I was going to cover it in something else. But what I've decided to do is actually put a mirror on the inside, which should be great. So what I've done is I've gone out and bought a cheap mirror. Now this was a damaged mirror. Okay, I've just bought it from the store. Obviously the back's all a bit damaged, but it cost me about £10. But there should be enough here to do this and leave me with lots more for other projects. So what I've got to do is get this out of the frame and then find a way of cutting it without it being all splintery. Okay, let me do that. Oh, wait. Oh. Well, that didn't go as well as expected. It's ended up coming out in 3 parts. The whole mirror was just stuck in with this hot glue. I mean, talk about a cheap mirror. And it's only about 2mm thick. Okay, but that may be to our advantage. What I can do is use these 2 broken pieces here to actually do some test cuts and then get all of the main cuts out of this. Okay, right, all I've got to do is find my glass cutter. Right, well, it's not going as well as I'd expected. The glass is so thin that the slightest mistake and it breaks. I haven't got much experience with glass, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my cutter. On here you get multiple reels, let's have a look, multiple cutting wheels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it around onto a new one, just to give me a fighting chance. So in theory that's a nice new cutting blade. Let's try again. Right, another disaster, trying to cut this end off here, and it split the glass. Oh God, split the glass like that. The thing is though, it's got this bit of tape across the middle, which I didn't really take any notice of. So when you try to break it, it transfers the stress somewhere else, and it ends up just cracking. So now this bit is no good. So I'm basically down to this little piece here. I don't even know if that's going to be big enough. Oh. Right, let's try again. Right, I've had to cheat a little bit here. This piece of mirror that I've cut here was just fractionally too big, now by about 1mm. So there's no way I'd be able to shave 1mm off the end of this without cracking it. And I can't afford to do that. So what I've done is I've recessed the corner here. So it's easier to take a little bit of the wood away. You're not going to be able to see the wood anyway. So that sits in there and that should now fit in there, he said confidently. Oh, come on, without getting it stuck. Okay, so that's now going to fit in there, and there's obviously this other one goes in this side. All right, so now I've got to cut the 2 short sides. Right, don't break it, don't break it. Right, hopefully this is my last cut. I've only got a little piece left out of that massive mirror I bought. I've got to do 1 cut here, which is for the end. If I muck this up, I'm going to be so annoyed, I'm just going to turn the lights off and go and have a cup of tea. So let's get this right. It broke. I didn't cut it. It broke. Right, this is definitely not going very well. As you can see, there's been loads of mistakey bits. Look, there's a whole pile of it here. Basically, I've used the whole mirror and not been able to get 4 sides. I managed to get 3, 1, 2, and the top. And my last attempt, this one, that broke just on the corner. This one didn't cut quite square. So that was my last attempt, and it's got a little tiny crack in it. Where is it? Yeah, it's got a little crack in it, which looks terrible. So luckily I managed to find another mirror here. Let's give it another go. This is going to cost me a fortune. Right, it's taken me all evening to make 4 pieces of glass. Okay, these 4 pieces here. What I'm going to do is stick them in now before they get broken. If they're kicking around the workshop, they're going to get broken. So the old saying of never work with children and animals should really include never working with children, animals and cheap mirrors, because these are rubbish. Right, I'm going to stick these in to make it safe. So now really I need to get some sort of coating on this, but before I do that, I need to find a way to put the glass in. Okay, my intention was I was going to use some clear silicone, okay, just do a bead around the edge and push the glass in, and that should have been fine. Problem is, my silicone's gone off, so I can't use that. I can't go and get any more because it's too late. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use, from the original picture frame, the cheap one that this came in, it had these little tags in it. So I'm going to try and reuse those. So let me give you a close-up of what I'm trying to do. So on the original picture frame, it had these little metal tags here. So when the glass went in like this, they just bent over and it holds the glass in. Okay, but these are literally just metal tags, and I've got to try and pull them out, which is not too hard. But the difficult is getting them put back in. Now obviously these have got to be made flat, so I'll have to hammer them flat, and then hopefully I can hammer them in straight. The added complication I've got at the moment is obviously now there's a load of mirrors in there and I don't want to break them. So let's just hit these flat. Okay, so I've got to try and get those in somehow. Let's have a go. So I've now managed to get all of these in. They're quite brittle and they bend really easily. So what I'm going to do now is put my glass in. Just before I put it in, I'm going to give the edges a wipe with one of these glasses cleaners. In theory, with this then I should be able to remove the glass again if I have to. I'll just clean these edges, because if I don't have to take it out again, I don't really want to. Okay, a little bit rattly. I think what I might do is put a little bead or a little blob of hot glue in either corner, just to make this a little bit more solid. Right, that's that. So I've put a little bit of hot glue in there. It's not actually holding the glass in, but it's just stopping it from vibrating. Okay, so now it doesn't vibrate. The next thing we got to do is, we can take our little bits of tape off. Okay, I just put those on there so I could lift the glass in and out without breaking it and without cutting my fingers. Okay, so now we are ready to give it a coat of something. Now I'm going to use this, which is Osmo door oil. I've used this quite a bit, and it's very sturdy. It's very tough, and it gives a nice sheen as well. So I'm going to use this. It's a bit cold in the workshop, so I may have some problems. So what I'm going to have to do is actually paint this thing, but then move it into the house. So that means once I've painted it, I need to be able to move it. So what I'm going to do, top tech, I'm going to use a bit of board. I'm going to use little toolbox, bit of tissue. So then I can paint this top bit, then turn it over, put it like that, paint the rest of it, and then while it's still drying, I can lift it up and I can take it into the house. Okay, that's the plan, and then I'll do something similar with the backboard. Right, so I guess I better start painting. Right, so that's the first coat on both of those. It may have looked a bit slapdash the way I was putting it on, but this stuff's actually a wax oil. So the application's quite easy, it's quite smooth. You don't have to be the same as you are with paint, because a majority of it will actually soak into the wood. Now what's going to happen now, so I've got to leave this at least 24 hours to dry over properly. Then I'm going to give it a slight denibbing, which means I'm going to give it a slight rub down and then give it a second coat, maybe even a third coat, but we'll see how we go. Right, but for now it's cold out here, so I'm going to move these somewhere warm and then come back to it in a day or two. Right, I'm off for a cup of tea. Right, so it's now Saturday. This thing has been trying to dry for the last 3 days, but because it's a bit cold at the moment, it's not really dried properly. Well, it's dried enough now. If you feel it, it's very slightly lumpy. So what I'm going to do is denib it and then give it another coat. Okay, so while the outside of the case is drying, what I'm going to do is quickly buff off this back panel. Okay, this has only had one coat, but I think that'll be more than enough for the inside. Going to give it a quick buff off with some sort of lint-free cloth type of thing. And then I'm going to mount the shoes. So let's see how this goes. Right, so as I mentioned before, these are going to be mounted one up this way and one up the other way. I'm going to do that because obviously her name is on there. So in theory, all I've got to do is somehow thread this through these holes I cut with the laser. I need something to poke it through with. Right, so that's those mounted quite securely now. They do move around a little bit, but once they're in the case, they shouldn't move. I've got to make sure that when I actually put this in the case, that these are fluffed up quite a bit. Otherwise, they just look a bit flat. The ends of the ribbon here, I just put a little bit of hot glue on, squeezed it together and then trimmed it off. And that should stop them fraying anymore. Okay, right, so that's ready to go. I've got the case up here drying. As soon as that's dry, I can put this in it and we're almost done. Right, so this has now been drying for almost a week now because I've had other things to do. So the actual wax oil has gone quite hard now. What I've got to do is give it a buff off with a soft cloth and also make sure all the glass inside and outside and all the mirrors are all nice and clean. So I'm just going to use a little bit of glass cleaner, but first give it a buff off. Right, before we attack the glass with a bit of glass cleaner, if we look on the edge here, there's a little bit of wax oil on the actual glass here. And I think the easiest way to get that off before I try and do it with the glass cleaner is just get a small Stanley blade and just basically gently scrape that off. You shouldn't scratch the glass. Okay, and you'll see it all comes off like wax. Right, the glass is nice and clean now. Last thing I want to do now is start putting fingerprints over it, so I've got to be careful. While it's clean on the inside, let's put the back on. So making sure it's up the right way, obviously. Now if you look at the back, this is actually bowed quite a bit now, where it's been drying for the last couple of days. But hopefully that should screw and hold down. Okay, make sure that they're all puffed up. Okay. Right, let's put our screws in. Right, so that's about it. It's all done now. I did make that look more complicated than it actually is, but it's all done now. This should last quite a few years without any problems. The finish is quite durable, so it should be okay hanging on the wall. I put two little brackets on here. Now what I might do is take these off and just give them to them. I don't know whether they're going to have it freestanding or whether they're going to hang it on the wall. Either way, they can do what they want. Okay, so this is done. This is the first pair of ballet shoes, first pair of tap shoes, just as a bit of memorabilia. Nice bit of engraving on it, and I think it's quite nice. It's a nice thing to have. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this and I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Welcome back. That was a good start, wasn't it? Right, so it's been so long since I've actually used my table saw. Let's try that again. I think I've... Oh, don't let the cats out. Thank you. Thanks, darling. Just about to start doing some sandy.
Done all your engraving or?
Yeah. This should be a nice present, okay? This was obviously asked. Okay, so that's about it. This is all done now. We've got the new... I'll tell you what, let's stop that. Start that all again.